Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Assembly Judiciary. Welcome to everyone here in Carson City, as well as those viewing from Las Vegas, and anyone online watching, whether it's through Nellis or the Legislature's YouTube channel. With that, I will ask the Secretary to please take the roll.
Assemblywoman Bilbray Axelrod. Assemblywoman Cohen.
Here.
Assemblywoman Considine. Assemblywoman Gallant.
Present.
Assemblyman Gray.
Here.
Assemblywoman Hanson.
Here.
Assemblywoman Hardy.
Here.
Assemblywoman LaRue Hatch.
Here.
Assemblywoman Marzola.
Here.
Assemblywoman Mosca.
Here.
Assemblywoman Newby.
Here.
Assemblyman Orentlicker.
Here.
Assemblywoman Summers Armstrong.
Present.
Assemblyman Urick. Chair Miller.
Here. Thank you, and please mark Assemblywoman Bilbray Axelrod absent excused. With that, today, just a few housekeeping issues before we get started, which are, again, please remember to turn down any of your devices that could make noise and be disruptive in the middle of the hearings. Also, a reminder that we ask that everyone always submit their exhibits at least by 12 p.m. the prior day before your presentation or bill hearing, making sure that it's free of any logos or anything that may come into a copyright issue, that it's just text generated itself. Whoop. So let me turn down my electronic devices so that there's nothing disruptive during hearing. Today we have two bill presentations. The first one will be Assembly Bill 126. This measure revises provisions governing business entities. I believe we have a number of presenters on this bill, so you may please approach the table. I believe we have Assemblyman Wynn, Senator Wynn. Okay. And Assemblyman, do we have someone on Zoom, or Mr. Kim, you're part of the presentation? So Mr. Kim, if you'd like to come up. So we have, who's presenting? Okay, Senator, are you presenting?
I'm briefly giving briefest of remarks.
Okay, so can we have you give briefest of remarks and then switch out with Mr. Kim? Okay, that way it'll just be a little more fluid. Okay, with that, we are ready whenever you are. Please proceed.
Good morning, Madam Chair. I'm going to start, and then I'll hand it over to Senator Wynn, and then Senator Wynn will leave the table. Good morning, Chair Miller, Vice Chair Marzola, and members of the esteemed Assembly Judiciary Committee. I am Assemblyman Yui Wynn, proud representative of District 8. I am thrilled to present Assembly Bill 126 to you all today as my first bill of my long legislative career, 21 days. This is particularly special because AB 126 is being dubbed as a win-win. Oh, wow, tough crowd. You can see I'm joined here by my mentor and our colleague in the Senate, Senator Rochelle Wynn, who is a joint sponsor on AB 126. When the business law section approached me about carrying this piece of legislation, Senator Wynn and I agree under one condition. They had to walk through the bill because this is a technical one. That is what we call a win-win situation. Less talk from me and more from them, the experts. Jokes aside, it is important work by the business law section to keep Nevada's business statutes current and competitive. We appreciate the diligence by the section to ensure Nevada is keeping pace with other states, especially Delaware. You will note several of the bill section proposed concept that already exists in Delaware. Delaware is often referred to as the gold standard in corporate law, and we want Nevada to steal that title. AB 126 help us to get closer to that goal. For example, AB 126 proposes efficiencies, such as permitting a board of directors to change the name of the corporation without requiring the vote of stockholders. That will make doing business in Nevada a little bit easier. I thank you all and urge you to support of AB 126. For today's bill's presentation, I'm also joined by Mackenzie Warren Kay with McDonald Corano, who represent the section, and Rob Kim and Albert Kovacs, the chair and the vice chair of the section, who will walk you through the bill. But first, I will yield the floor to the other half of the winning team, Senator Rochelle Wynn.
Thank you. Rochelle Wynn, Senator representing Senate District 3 for the record. I want to thank Assemblyman Wynn for agreeing to work on this bill with me, and also thank you to Chair Miller, Vice Chair Marzola, and of course my Assembly Representative, Assemblywoman Newby. It's great to be back before this committee, and I will be brief. I am proud to support this business law section bill and their efforts to keep Nevada business statutes on the cutting edge and as predictable as possible for our business community. It really is a win-win situation for the Nevada business community. I apologize that I will not be able to stay for the remainder of the hearing, but I know that you are in good hands with Assemblyman Wynn, Mackenzie Warren Kay, Rob Kim, and Albert Kovacs. And I told you I would be brief, and I will turn this now over to Mrs. Kay.
Thank you very much. Mackenzie Warren Kay with McDonald Carano on behalf of the section. Good morning, Chair Miller, Vice Chair Marzola, members. It's my pleasure to represent the business law section each year. I like to think of this bill as routine maintenance. So this section is comprised of practitioners from all over the state. They interface with our business laws. They see how they function. They find areas of clarity and opportunities where Nevada can be a leader. The goal of AB 126 is just to make sure Nevada remains a preeminent place to do business. We like to be business friendly, and this bill does that. I also want to acknowledge the business chambers. Each session, we engage with them, we collaborate with them. You'll be hearing from some of the business chambers this morning. Albert Kovacs was going to be joining via Zoom, but instead we just have Mr. Rob Kim here in person. With that, Chair, I will hand it over to Mr. Kim to walk you and your members through the technical aspects of the bill. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the Assembly Judiciary Committee. My name is Robert Kim. I am a partner with the law firm of Ballard Spahr. My practice is generally business organizations, corporate transactions, M&A, and finance. And I'm here before you on behalf of the Business Law section of the State Bar of Nevada to present AB 126. As quick background, when we represent this bill or present this bill to you, although we have the approval of the State Bar to present it, it's clear that the matters contained in the bill are not necessarily any position or statements from the State Bar itself and the recommendations from the Executive Committee of the Business Law section. So it's clear that we make that distinction, even though the State Bar of Nevada has authorized us to go forward with the bill and obviously present this to you today. Before you have the bill itself, a small amendment and a summary memorandum that goes through each of the sections with cross-references to the section itself, to the NRS section that it relates to, and provides a summary as well. As you have that before you, I will just focus on the areas that are worth noting for the record. And obviously, if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them at any time. Moving to the AB sections 2 and 3, these are items that relate to record requests by stockholders of a corporation. And here we're just trying to refine and clarify how that process works. And that can also be read in conjunction with AB 126 Section 8 as well, relating to the right of inspection, where we're trying to provide the parties with some predictability and also to memorialize things that we see in practice. For example, usually when a stockholder of record requests information of the company and is provided that information, that comes with a confidentiality request from the corporation, which I think is a very reasonable request to maintain those financial records on behalf of the corporation confidential. And so we, instead of allowing that to play out back and forth, we thought we would just memorialize that as part of the terms and conditions of receiving that information. The next area relates to AB 126 sections 4, 9, 10, and 14 that relate to plans, arrangements, and instruments. And here we just wanted to just clarify that the ability of a corporation to establish plans, arrangements, or instruments that provide certain rights and privileges to stockholders is done so in accordance with and in conjunction with NRS 78-200, which is a section that relates to the issuance of preferred stock, so that those So that is the vehicle for which those rights can be granted. Section 5 of AB 126 is an important area as well, where we are allowing a corporation to approve a reverse stock split, not necessarily by a majority vote of stockholders, but by a plurality vote, where as long as there are more votes cast in favor than against. And this addresses a situation where we have publicly traded Nevada corporations that need to amend their articles to increase their authorized shares. But in this day and age, where we have a lot of investors owning shares in their own brokerage accounts, they don't necessarily respond to all the meetings. I know, when I get that little card that says, please vote, I put it in the recycling bin almost like in a second. So it addresses the need to amend articles and obtain the sufficient voting power and to allow a corporation to progress and continue to raise capital as needed. So I think this is an important feature that will help Nevada corporations and is limited to public corporations only. The next item to note would be, as Assemblyman Nguyen mentioned, the ability to change the name of a corporation without actually formally requiring a vote of a majority of the voting power. Because the name of the corporation is part of the Articles of Incorporation, and in order to make any change therein, the statute requires that a majority of the voting power do so. As mentioned in other states like Delaware, this is one feature that does not require the vote of stockholders. And so we thought it was time to introduce that concept, that ability to a board of directors, so that they can, if they, in their discretion and in their duties on behalf of the corporation, thought it was appropriate that they could go ahead and do that. And then Section 13 of AB 126 deals with clarifying restated articles of incorporation. It was important to just clean up the fact that not every document needed to be restated when one does restate their articles of incorporation. A lot of times a corporation might have its initial articles of incorporation that may have been amended piecemeal over time, and may have also involved certain certificates of designation which establish the rights of preferred stock. That being said, when a corporation does like to restate the articles, they do not need to include these certificates of designation themselves, which are typically standalone documents, although defined as being part of the articles. So we thought that would be a good amendment, because it just clarifies some confusion and maybe some too overly literal interpretation of our current laws. And then the last item I would say is sections 25 to 28, 30 and 31, where we're just relocating some definitions. And it's important to relocate these definitions of advance notice statement and statement of intent, because they relate to dissenters' rights under Nevada law. And when there's a transaction, an acquisition, or other business combination that triggers dissenters' rights in favor of stockholders, the corporation is required to send sections of the statute that relate to dissenters' rights to the stockholders themselves. Whereas these sections were added last session, they were not put in within NRS 92A 300 to 92A 500, and it makes it harder to send the block of statute. So by just moving it to the appropriate dissenters' rights sections, then there's no failure to include everything that a stockholder might need to understand their rights as a dissenter for a particular transaction. That concludes my formal presentation. Thank you again for the opportunity to provide that to you today, and I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone might have.
Okay, thank you for that, Mr. Kim. With that, our first question is from Assemblywoman Summers Armstrong.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you all for the presentation. This was some really interesting reading. Hard to stay awake. But I do have one thing that I want to note, and that is in Section 26. You have a lot of new text there. And Section 26.1, you said that the notice, advance notice, would be sent 20 days before the effective date of the proposed corporate action, but that a person who is a dissenter would have to respond which may not be less than 15 days after the date of the notice is sent. Is this a conflict in timing? If the notice for the change is sent 20 days out, but they have to respond by the 15th day, that seems a little tight, especially if it's sent by mail. If it takes 4 or 5 days or 3 days to get there, they have to respond immediately. And would you be open to opening the timeline a little bit to give people more notice and time to respond to an action? Thank you.
Robert Kim on behalf of the State Bar, Business Law Section. So one aspect of this particular amendment is that we actually haven't made any changes to the dates, and this is merely a relocation of the current definition to, like I mentioned before, between two sections, the range of 92A 300 to 500. So this language that is that you referenced is the current law as it is today. So we're not. So just to clarify, we haven't changed those dates. As to your concern, I follow what you're saying in that they have a 15-day window upon receipt to provide their statement of intent. And then, after the notice is sent. And so, per statute, there's certain, depending on how it's sent, there are defined days, about, I think it's 3 days if sent by mail, for example. And so that's the window of time that stockholders have to respond. As to whether we could expand that, I at this point, I'd be hesitant about looking at other states and making sure, we wouldn't disrupt all the other time frame mechanisms. But if anything, I wanted to just make sure this is not something that we've changed, and we're just carrying it forward from a different portion of Chapter 92A to another portion.
Thank you for your question. Next question is from Assemblywoman Newby.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. On Section 5, when you discuss the stock split voting and adjusting that standard, a couple of questions. One, this applies to owners of security that own them separately and not within, say, a mutual fund, I'm assuming. And then secondly, when they vote, is it each person one vote, or is it weighted by the number of shares that the person owns?
Robert Kim again for the State Bar of Nevada Business Law Section. So what I propose to do is kind of just walk through how this would happen, and that way I think it might cover some of your just questions that you have. If a corporation that was publicly traded, for example, had 100 million shares authorized and had about 90 million shares issued and outstanding, and they only had 10 million shares available for issuance, that's something that they would want to correct by either increasing their authorized shares, which would require a majority vote, or effecting a reverse stock split of their current issued and outstanding shares so that they had more headroom in terms of their authorized shares. So in the example I provided, the corporation would solicit the votes of its public stockholders. Every person has one vote per share, and they would vote either for or against. And the proposal would allow the board to go ahead with the reverse stock split if the votes for the reverse stock split were in excess of the votes cast against the reverse stock split. And if that was approved in this instance, for example, and they proposed a 1-for-2 reverse stock split, that would take that corporation's issued and outstanding shares from 90 million to 45 million. Now that they would have 55 million shares left for authorized shares to issue. So in terms of the votes, it would treat everybody equally. They'd each have one vote per share up front, and if it was approved, then each stockholder would then have their holdings reduced in half, given the proposed 1-for-2 reverse stock split, and then the company would be able to have the authorized capital to enter into other financing transactions to raise capital for its operations. In terms of your question regarding the mutual fund, I'm not quite sure, but if they were a stockholder of the corporation, they themselves would have their own votes per shares. However many shares they had, they would have the equal number of votes as well, and they would vote in favor or against it as they decide, as they make their own decision to do so.
Thank you for your question. Next question is from Assemblywoman Cohen.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. On Section 4, Sub 5, where you're changing the and its, deleting and its and putting in or, it looks like you're separating the corporate interests and the shareholder interests. And I don't know enough about business law to know whether those can be separated that way or why you're separating it that way. Can you address that, please?
Robert King again for the State Bar of Nevada Business Law section. As to the question posed as to the separation of the concepts of corporation and stockholders, one thing that is important to understand is that Nevada corporate law is a multi-constituency statute. So the Board of Directors owes its fiduciary duties to the corporation as a whole. And pursuant to NRS 78-138, it has the ability to consider long-term, short-term interests of different constituents, such as stockholders, such as employees, such as the interests of the state, and so on, as set forth in that section. So yes, in Nevada, the board can make decisions on behalf of the corporation as a whole. It can make decisions on behalf of the corporation weighing different factors in particular. It could be the short-term interests of stockholders, it could be the long-term interests of stockholders, but they have the ability to have the flexibility to make what they think is the best decision for the corporation. Because sometimes the short-term interest of one stockholder might not be the same for that of a long-term stockholder or for the state or for other constituents as well.
Proceed.
Thank you, Chair. So is this a kind of a big policy change? I understand that you're saying that in Nevada, the board has different constituencies, but is this kind of a big policy change that we're making within this legislation, or is this following along with what we've done in other legislation in the past and is just bringing it in line with what we've already done in other places in the statutes?
Robert Kim again for the State Bar of Nevada Business Law section. So what is being proposed here does not change how I have or the committee has looked at Nevada corporate law and how the duties are owed. It's not a policy change at all. It's just consistent with the policy that has always been in place for Nevada and how the board of directors owes their duties in general to the corporation. Our attempt here was just to clarify so that it was, some people thought, there was some concern that the way it was written didn't give the flexibility to consider other constituents that weren't listed in the section itself. And so we just tried to make it a little more clear that it was a broad range that is available to the board of directors.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your question. Next question is from Assemblywoman Considine.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the presentation this morning. I have some questions on Section 2 and 3, the records requests, the affidavit portion, also Section 8, the confidentiality agreement, and Section 12, the name change without stockholder approval. Are there any examples in Nevada of why we need these? Have there been any problems with those three areas? Or is this just, they're doing it in Delaware, so we want to bring it here? But I think that confidentiality, I guess for Section 8, is this a public entity? Or public, are these all with public corporations? I'm just trying to figure out if these are problems that you're trying to solve because we've had these problems in Nevada, or these are just things just because Delaware is doing it, we want to do it here. And if there is a balance between the needs of the corporation and the needs of the stockholders, that this has been vetted before.
Robert Kim again for State Bar of Nevada Business Law section. So I will, let me first address the name change item. That one in particular is a feature that that the members of the committee have received as requests, we'd like to change the name, and we would say, well, that requires a stockholder vote, and if you're a public company, that's can be a timely and expensive exercise. And they would say, other practitioners say, well, that it's allowed in other states, such as Delaware. Why can't the board just approve it? And we say, well, that's not what our statute provides. So on that section in particular, I think that is in direct response to a feature that exists elsewhere that we are adopting to acknowledge the requests that practitioners have received over time. So that one in particular is squarely a response to practice. As it relates to sections 2 and 3, I'd say those two sections were more just to clarify the reference to such purpose, so that it was very clear that they could not use the record to sell the record or offer to sell the stockholder list and other records under those two sections. So there, the change is pretty minor, and I don't think that changes anything. We just want to be more specific and just structurally from the way the section was written, so that it was very clear what that other purpose was as referenced before it. And then for section 8, this is where we, like I mentioned before, this deals with financial books and records. And if you're a public, if my recollection is correct, if you're a public corporation that files current reports under the 1934 Act, which is the Securities and Exchange Act of 1934, and you file your periodic reports consistent with those rules and requirements, then you already have information out there as to your financial situation. And this confidentiality agreement essentially relates more to private companies that have financial books and records that have been requested by the stockholder. And if they are provided, usually they're granted or issued along with the agreement to maintain those records as confidential. So that would be the typical instance where you'd see that in a private corporation. And so there, usually that's where we found the parties end up. And so we thought it was appropriate just to reflect that in the statute, so that it was clear that someone can't just take the records and somehow release information, sensitive information regarding the company.
Proceed.
Thank you. I appreciate all of that. So just going backwards, so the one that we just spoke of, the private corporation, I understand that it's a private corporation as opposed to a public corporation, so that is delineated on this. And then also, this doesn't overrule any whistleblower protection, correct?
That's not the intent at all. Robert Kim again for the State Bar of Nevada Business Law section. That is not the intent whatsoever. It's just meant to kind of streamline the process instead of having the back and forth that normally people have to go through to get the records. If there's just the upfront clear expectation that they need to maintain their information as confidential, and then we thought that was a way to make the process more efficient for both sides.
And that hasn't been a problem in Nevada. Well, people are asking for it, but there hasn't been a documented issue. I just wanted to make sure for all three of these. On the changing the name, does this require at least notice? I understand that you don't want to have to, they don't want to have an entire vote, but does this still require notice to the stockholders if the name is going to be changed?
Robert Kim, State Bar of Nevada's Business Law section. So as written, it does not require notice. If one is a public company, then one is required pursuant to SEC laws to file a current report on Form 8K as to any amendments to the articles and bylaws. So if you're a public company, that the securities laws would require a notice to the stockholders in that regard. But currently, if you're a privately held corporation, there is no current requirement, not that I can think of.
Last follow-up, Chair.
I would follow up to your question. Blinking. And just simply put, we keep hearing many states and Delaware, but we just keep hearing Delaware. So which are those other states? and/or how many other states?
Robert Kim again for the State Bar Nevada Business Law section. So in terms of what we do look at to step back generally, we generally look at the state corporate laws of Delaware. We look at the Model Business Corporation Act, and then depending on the instance, we look at other states as well. For example, Nevada is somewhat based on the Model Corporation Act, so we would look at that at times and it's appropriate to look at other states that have adopted the Model Business Corporation Act. But Delaware is not a Model Business Corporation Act state, so they have their own setup of laws. At times, we will look to, for example, another multi-constituency state is Pennsylvania, for example. Sometimes we look to California only because of its proximity, and sometimes our judges are inclined to look at states close by for different kinds of jurisprudence. So we don't do it too often, but we do it in response when we do hear things, especially when we deal with counsel from other law firms that are located elsewhere that use a lot of Delaware corporations for the most part, that there's reason to, they suggest different things that we might want to include in our laws.
Okay, so let me clarify my question a little bit. So it's not just who are we looking to, it's who's actually doing this. So when you say the Model Business Corporation Act, how many states and which states apply to that? When even a specific question earlier about the ability for the corporation to change the name without including the vote of the stockholders, we just keep hearing Delaware. How many states actually do that? So that's what I'm looking at, is how many states actually do what is attempted to do in this bill, because the previous line of questioning was in fact about which other states are doing this, and if this is specifically already a problem here in Nevada, why are these changes coming forward? So could you again give us, for the details that you've specified in the bill for the changes, how many and which states are doing what we're attempting to do in this bill?
Robert Kim again for the State Bar Business Law section. For the name change, we have a committee, the executive committee, that consists of up to 15 individuals, practitioners in the state. And this, I don't recall the person who suggested this particular amendment, but as I was not the one that proposed it within our committee, I don't have the exact details of the other states that do this, and I'm happy to provide that information after subsequent, just so you have that context for yourself. And but I don't have that information currently to know which states have adopted or permit that. But as I mentioned before, it's been a long-standing differentiator for Delaware to be able to do that. And it's something that, as practitioners in Nevada, we've heard many times. And as mentioned before, Delaware is looked to as a state for their corporate laws. And so we thought it was appropriate at this point to bring it forward for addition to Nevada's corporate laws.
Chair Miller, if I may, Mackenzie Warren Kay with McDonald Carano, just to expand on Delaware a bit, on the jurisprudence question for members, Delaware has a court of chancery, so it's a special court system that they've created that specializes in business issues. So this is why we refer to Delaware frequently as the gold standard. Thank you.
Thank you. We will move on. Our next question is from Assemblywoman Hardy.
Thank you, Chair Miller, and thank you all for this very interesting bill and discussion. If you could just, Section 17 through 24 talk about records filed erroneously. If you could just maybe fill us in, are you further clarifying something that already exists, or is that something additional that we're adding in the bill? Thank you.
Robert Kim, State Bar Nevada Business Law section. In response to the question as to what sections 17 through 24 are trying to accomplish, I would say that those are trying to merely reflect current practice. So currently, if there was an error made in a filing with the Nevada Secretary of State, one could correct that filing by filing a certificate of correction. And whether there's a number misprinted or some other aspect of the filing that needed to be corrected due to either error or oversight. What these amendments are trying to do are actually permit the actual filing itself to be categorized as being corrected, the entire filing versus something in it. And that is a practice that the Secretary of State is already accepting, and we thought it was appropriate to make the statute just reflect the current practice amongst the Secretary of State and the attorneys.
Next question from Assemblywoman LaRue Hatch.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for being here today. So as I consider bills, I always am cognizant of the time and resources that are taken to put these bills into effect, right? Every bill that we pass has to go to lawyers to draft the regulations, has to be put into effect with the executive branch. It costs taxpayer time and money. And so as I am considering it, I always want to make sure that the public good of the bill outweighs whatever cost is associated. And so I just wondered if you could just speak to the societal good that comes from this bill. What is the benefit that our constituents in our communities will see from this bill?
Robert Kim, State Bar, Nevada, Business Law Section. So as a committee, as the executive committee of the State Bar, of the Business Law Section, we keep in mind different motivations for what we propose. Obviously, there are items that come to our attention that either are in error or could work better and may not have all the features that may be appropriate or needed by those that use and avail themselves to our business entities. And so we take those into consideration. We have jurisprudence from different courts from different states that come across and are written up by the ABA at times, American Bar Association, that is, in terms of the ABA. As Mrs. K mentioned, Delaware has a chancery court that is structured in a way as a court of equity to publish many decisions. And so by virtue of that, there's just a lot of discussion as to corporate law in Delaware, and that's how they've been able to establish themselves as being a very well-known jurisdiction for corporate law because of that ability. That being said, we don't reflexively adopt items that just because another state advances them. We try to think who's using these laws and whether it's something that is appropriate and would help them use our laws better. And a lot of times we try to clarify items that over time and over practice realize maybe that would help to add some phrase here or to provide some more information about, because it's hard to understand sometimes the impact of a law until you have used it for a few sessions. So a lot of times we do amend things that we have proposed in years past just to clarify and see how it's being worked into practice. So from our perspective, we like to make Nevada an attractive jurisdiction for people to choose for their business entities. And obviously, we know that with that in mind, to the extent that that helps the Nevada Secretary of State maintain or increase the fees that they generate, then I think that's a great result. But that's obviously one of the many things we think about in terms of what we propose for the business law section and the bills that we advance every session.
Thank you for your question. We have a question from Assemblywoman Hanson.
There we go. Thank you, Madam Chair. And it's good to see you. Thank you for being here. Hoping we can find a win-win. I always appreciate puns, so thank you for that. To kind of take off from my colleague, Assemblywoman LaRue Hatch's, the way she looks at things, I too come here in a lens of from a business perspective, owning a small business, an S corporation, certainly not legally trained, but I'm just asking if you or any of those who are going to testify, if I've got this wrong, make sure you let me know on the record. as I look at it, knowing that Delaware, Wyoming, Nevada are kind of the top incorporating states, and it looks like you're trying to bring some of the best practices that you're seeing in what we might call the gold standard, being Delaware. To me, it looks as if we're trying to just streamline things. It's not a huge policy shift. As a business, when I go onto the Secretary of State's website, there are practices, there are things for filing that I could relate to in a sense from this, even though I don't deal with stocks. So I'm just seeing this, even though it's a lot of legal language, I don't want to miss something super important. It looks as if this is just trying to fine tune, bring in some best practices of streamlining language to make it a little bit less onerous for corporations when dealing with maybe some minor changes. If there's major changes that I'm missing, that's what I would want you to maybe clarify on the record for me.
Robert Kim, State Bar, Nevada Business Law Section. So I would agree with the statement that the intent of this bill is not to really create a policy shift in terms of Nevada corporate governance, and it's meant to address, for the most part, items of clarity and just additional features. As to the items I did highlight, to the extent that there is items worth noting for clarification purposes that are a little, that may change the standard, I would point back to Section 5, amending the voting standard for reverse stock splits. That is a different standard that we are adopting to allow publicly traded corporations the ability to obtain the vote they need to operate their business. And then the name change is, again, something new. So that's something that we're granting the board the ability to adopt without stockholder vote. I think those two are the ones that really just change the standard per se in terms of what is being done before, and the balance. Clarity, practice, and other considerations are what the other sections are based on.
Thank you, Assemblywoman. With that, we have concluded our questions. We will now open it up for testimony. So anyone interested in approaching to testify in support of Assembly Bill 126, you will have up to 2 minutes to testify. Just want to remind everyone that a testimony in support means that you support the bill as currently written. And the same for opposition. If you really oppose any section of the bill, it would be an opposition. And then, of course, there is neutral. So with that, please proceed. Oh, and please state your name and spell it clearly for the record, please.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Paul Moradkin, last name Moradkhan, with the Vegas Chamber. The Chamber is in support of AB 126. As you heard from the presenters and the bill sponsors, we view this as a technical cleanup bill rather than a policy bill. As you've heard, it regards to increasing efficiencies, practicality in the business sector, but also to keep up with the national competition in these areas. As you've discussed and noted, this is also a revenue line for the state, and we believe this is a win for Nevada and for the business sectors across the state. So thank you very much.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, Chelsea Capurro, Capurro, here on behalf of the Urban Chamber in support of AB 126. Mr. Moradkin, I think you forgot to say a win-win for all. We are in support as well, same issues as Mr. Moradkin said, and we appreciate the clarity and the cleanup, and happy to support this.
Is there anyone else here in Carson City that would like to testify in support? Anyone in Las Vegas that would like to testify in support of Assembly Bill 126? Not seeing anyone approach in Las Vegas, the phone number to testify is 1-669-900-6833, and the meeting ID number today is 883-669-80234. So broadcasting, please open the lines in case there's anyone that would like to testify in support of Assembly Bill 126.
If you would like to testify in support of Assembly Bill 126, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Callers, if you would like to testify in support of Assembly Bill 126, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, the public line is open and working. There are no callers choosing to participate at this time.
Okay, thank you. With that, we will open it up for anyone in opposition of Assembly Bill 126.
Chair?
Oh, yes?
Sorry to interrupt. A caller just raised their hand to speak in support.
Yes, please let them proceed.
Chair Miller, Vice Chair Marzella, and members of Assembly Judiciary. My name is Cindy Choi. I'm the Vice President of Nevada API Chamber of Commerce. We want to thank the Business Law Section and Bill sponsors Assemblyman Nguyen and Senator Nguyen for including us on this bill each year. We support Assembly Bill 126 because it helps to maintain Nevada's position as one of the most pro-business states in the nation. As a leader in the business community, it's critical that we are involved in legislation that impact members, but even more importantly, it's critical that Nevada's business statutes provide clarity and stay competitive with other states so that Nevada remains the top destination to incorporate and then conduct the business. AB 126 brings better predictability and then provides efficiency of the Nevada companies, which is central to Chamber's mission. We thank Assemblyman Nguyen for his work on this bill and section for including us in this process. The Nevada API Chamber of Commerce would urge your support on the Bill 126. Thank you.
Thank you, caller. Broadcasting, is there anyone else online?
Are there any callers that would like to testify in support of Assembly Bill 126? If so, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. One moment, Chair. Caller, you're unmuted and may begin.
Good morning, Chairwoman Miller and Vice Chairwoman Marzola, and members of the Judiciary Assembly. I'm Peter Guzman, President of the Latin Chamber of Commerce, and it's my pleasure to testify in support of AB 126 this morning. We thank the Business Law Section for including the Latin Chamber each session and keeping our members current on how Nevada is taking positive steps forward to protect its reputation as an excellent place to conduct business. And I think that's one of the most important things. Nevada must be an excellent place to conduct business. I also want to acknowledge the bill sponsor, Assemblyman Nugent and Senator Nugent, for taking on a complicated but important topic. This bill provides additional clarity to our business statutes, and nothing is more critical than having predictability when making business decisions. AB 126 is a pro-business piece of legislation, and the Latin Chamber urges your support on this bill because we are always pro-business. Thank you so much.
Thank you, caller. Broadcasting, is there anyone else on the line?
Callers, if you would like to testify in support of Assembly Bill 126, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, the line is open. It appears there are no other callers choosing to participate in support at this time.
Okay, thank you. Now we will close support and open it back up for anyone in opposition of Assembly Bill 126. So if there's anyone here in Carson City that would like to oppose Assembly Bill 126, please come forward. Not seeing anyone. Anyone in Las Vegas that would like to oppose Assembly Bill 126? Broadcasting, is there anyone on the line that would like to oppose 126?
Callers, if you would like to testify in opposition to Assembly Bill 126, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Callers, if you would like to testify in opposition to Assembly Bill 126, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, the line is open and working. There are no callers choosing to participate in opposition at this time.
Thank you. I will open it up for testimony in neutral. If there's anyone testifying in neutral of Assembly Bill 126, please approach the table. Not seeing anyone here in Carson City, is there anyone in Las Vegas that would like to testify in neutral? Not seeing anyone in Las Vegas. Broadcasting, is there anyone on the line that would like to testify in neutral?
Callers, if you would like to testify in neutral for Assembly Bill 126, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller, you're unmuted and may begin.
Hello, Chair, members of the committee. Gabriel DeCara for the record. I serve as the Chief Deputy for Secretary of State Francisco V. Aguilar, and since we are currently without a Deputy Secretary for Commercial Recordings, I've been filling in for that role as well. Apologies for not being there in person, but I'm recovering from a cold, and I thought you might not want that in the building. It is the Secretary's position that Nevada law should be streamlined wherever possible to improve our business climate without compromising on protections for small business or local investors. He's spoken repeatedly of wanting to keep Nevada's status as Delaware of the West, and there are many provisions of this bill that would bring us further in line with Delaware. This consistency could prove beneficial when trying to bring new entities to Nevada, which could then lead to increased revenue via the Commercial Recordings Division. However, I believe it's worth noting that the Commercial Recordings Division currently has a single compliance investigator who has duties across multiple divisions, including elections and notary, and if there's any concern that any of these changes might lead to increased complaints of fraud, our office may need additional resources to effectively investigate. Additionally, though we did not get a request for a fiscal note on this bill, it will require changes to the software of Silverflume and many of our forms, which could come with a cost. We began reviewing the legislation when we got the language and hope to have an answer for the question shortly. We look forward to working with the bill sponsors in this committee and are always available for further conversation. Who doesn't love a win-win bill? Thank you very much again, Chair Miller, members of the committee.
Thank you.
If you would like to testify in neutral for Assembly Bill 126, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, the line is open and working. There are no other callers choosing to testify at this time.
Okay, thank you for that. With that, I will go ahead and close testimony. I will give the bill sponsors an opportunity to provide a brief final comments.
Thank you, Chairwoman Miller, Vice Chair Marzola, and the rest of the Assembly Judiciary Committee. You know, when the business section law came to me about this bill, of course, I'm not a lawyer. I don't play one. And, you know, in my role as outside of being a Assembly representative, a nonprofit executive, I'm also a small business owner. And one of the lenses that I looked at when this bill came to my desk was how can we make things easier for small business and how we can reduce barriers. And those are the two win-win factors that I looked at when this bill was submitted. So hopefully we were able to clarify any questions that you all had today. We will always follow up if things that needs to be clarified. Mr. Kim, Mrs. Kay, and Mr. Kovacs, as long as Senator Nguyen are ready here to be able to help push this forward. So I urge your support of this bill as you saw or heard the testimony from the chamber leaders, and I thank you for your support.
Robert Kim, State Bar, Nevada Business Law Section. I just want to thank Assemblyman Nguyen, Senator Nguyen for their support. It's very important to work with members of our community and in conjunction with their efforts and their focus to create a better environment for all of our citizens here. So definitely that's something that we as a committee are looking to do when we propose our amendments. And hopefully we've done this and are able to express our motivation for the matters that are set forth within AB 126.
Thank you so much for your presentation. And with that, I will go ahead and close the hearing on Assembly Bill 126. Next bill that we have on the agenda is Assembly Bill 142. This bill revises provisions governing certain sales of property. And with that, we have our Minority Leader O'Neill, who will be presenting the bill alongside, both are presenting together.
Short chair.
So with that, we are ready whenever, and I'm thinking short chair, I need a tall chair. I can never see over everybody down there. But yes, please, Minority Leader, when you are ready, please proceed.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Chair Miller and members of the Judiciary. I'm P.K. O'Neill, Assemblyman for Assembly District 40, which encompasses all of Carson City, all of Story County, and the eastern side of Washoe County, up to the city of Sparks. Today I have a bill for you. It may not be as stimulating as the previous bill, and it may not be a win-win, but hopefully it will at least be a win for you. It's AB 142. I'm here with the assistance of Pam Del Porto, the Executive Director for the Nevada Sheriffs and Chiefs, along with several other state sheriffs who will also show their support and give reasoning why this bill is important to them. In short, I will tell you that all this bill does is bring the Nevada sheriffs and their mechanisms for auctions into the 21st century. It is not my intent to disturb the newspapers or any print media of their current practices regarding printing of notices. If you particularly draw your attention to page 3, starting at line 23 of section 1.1 parentheses C, parentheses 3, which is the current language of NRS 21130, supports that statement. There is no change. And I bring that to your attention because there was some conversation earlier this morning that this bill would impugn print media. And I wanted to clarify that there is no intent or reasoning for that. I've been in discussion with LCB Legal on that, and they are in agreement with me. So with that said, Chair, I would like to turn it over to Mr. Porto for further conversation. Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chair Miller and Vice Chair Marzola, and thank you, Assemblyman O'Neill. My name for the record is Pamela Del Porto, P-A-M-E-L-A, Del Porto, D-E-L-P-O-R-T-O. And first off, I want to apologize. It's been a long time since I've testified before a committee, so I get nervous. I might speak fast and I might shake, but I just appreciate your time. Just some history. I have been executive director for approximately a year for Nevada Sheriffs and Chiefs Association. And during this past year, I have had the opportunity to attend conferences, and some of these have vendors, exhibitors, and one of them came to my attention because it was about online auctions and kind of hit me odd. And so I asked him if it's legal in Nevada, and he's like, not for sheriffs, but it is for the county treasurers for their tax liens. So I came up with this because I looked at the statute 21.150, and it talked about the sheriff or their designee having to be on the court steps. You know, and I'm like, all I could think of was like the old town criers, and it seemed very outdated to me. So that's when I began doing some research, and I spoke with Assemblyman O'Neill that there has to be a way to improve this mechanism. So I'll just start going through some of the sections. Many of them are just repeats from section to section, but I wanted to go through them. So Section 1, NRS 21.130 would be amended under 1A, B, and C, that perishable property notifications would include in cases of an internet website or other electronic medium where the property was being stored or situated pending the sale. Section 1 amendments also on page 3 of the bill draft also include in Section 4 that the notification to the tenants of the property would be notified if the sale was being conducted on an internet website or other electronic medium, and that notice must include the website or the other electronic medium, how the electronic bids would be accepted, and the period during the time the bids would be accepted. Section 2 amendments would add language under Section 1. It would remove the language outlining the specific time frame of 9 to 5, and would add language that the sale of property under execution may be conducted on an internet website or other electronic medium as designated by the officer conducting the sale. The officer in charge may also allow for the collections of deposits and payments by the bidder, settle the transaction, and remit the payment to the purchase as the officer directs. New Section 4 identifies persons that are not authorized to become a purchaser or be interested in any purchase of property under execution. And I got to catch my pages up. New Section 5 describes the property, that the property is capable of manual delivery, how it should be done both in person and when conducted on an internet website or other electronic medium, that the personal property must be sold to bring to the highest price, and that the judgment debtor is able to make his or her wishes known in certain circumstances of real property. Section 3 of the amendments, under covenant number 6, to add language directing the trustee on how to notify the persons present for the sale to be notified in cases of postponement and in cases of sales conducted on an internet website or other electronic medium by proclamation published on the internet website or other electronic medium. Further into the same section identifies that the governing body of the county maintains the authority whether to authorize the sale on an internet website or other electronic medium. So in other words, and I didn't word this very well, so if the sale is going to be postponed, it has to be posted posted on publicly, or if it's on an internet site, if the sale is going to be on the internet, they have to post it on the internet that it's being postponed. Section 4 amendments under NRS 107.080 under Section 4 add identifying that if the sale is to be conducted on an internet website or other electronic medium, notice will be posted to include the actual internet website or electronic medium, how bids will be accepted, and the time period during which the bids will be accepted. There is additional language in the section about property for sale and the location. And so I believe that we're up to page 12 on the amendments. So now we're to section 6, which begins on page 17. Excuse me. NRS 107.081 would be amended to add or remove language under section 1. Remove that language that identifies that the sale must be done between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. and information about the agent holding the sale not becoming a purchaser. That language was then re-added under section 3. So they removed the language about the agent holding the sale cannot be a purchaser. We just put it in at a different location. New section 3 adds language that contains the mandate that the governing body of the county may authorize the sale of the property to be conducted on an internet website or other electronic medium as they designate. Still in section 6, NRS 107.081, new section 3. It's continued, maintains that the governing body of the county, if they choose to have the sale on an internet website or other electronic medium, may further authorize the provider of that service to collect deposits and payments by the bidder, settle the transaction, remit payment of the purchase price as directed by the agent holding the sale. This new section also identifies who shall not become a purchaser or be interested in the purchase at such a sale. And this is where the agent conducting the sale was re-added back in, and that's on page 18. Section 7 and 8 amendments, NRS 107.082 would be amended to add and remove language. Section 1 adds the language, the proclamation has to include should the sale be postponed. Again, there's a repeat through these different statutories of the requirements for posting. And NRS 116.311635 would be amended in the same manner by adding a new section 5. So let me go back. New section 5 is written that the governing body of the county in which the unit is located may authorize a person described in subsection 3 to conduct the sale on an internet website or other electronic medium designated by the governing body. In connection with such a sale, the governing body may authorize the person who operates the internet website or other electronic medium to collect the deposits and payments made by the bidder, including without limitations, payments made by wire transfer, electronic funds transfer, or cashier's checks. They can settle the transaction and remit the payment of purchase price as directed by the person conducting the sale. It also goes on to, there's ongoing language about the sale being conducted on an internet website or other electronic medium where the property is placed and described as described in the matter, and that's down in paragraph subsection B. Subsection A, for a sale that is not conducted on an internet website or other electronic medium, shall state to the persons assembled for the sale whether or not the holder of the security described in subsection has satisfied the amount of the association's lien. And for a sale that is conducted on an internet website, it shall be published on the internet website or other electronic medium. When I originally approached Assemblyman O'Neill, I thought it was just taking out one little sentence in one little statute, and then I got this monster. But anyway, so Section 9 amendments. Section 5, and I think I've read that. The governing body for the county may authorize the sale on an internet website. Section 6 adds the language that should an internet provider be used and the sale is postponed, the internet provider must provide notification of the postponement Other language was to follow procedures for any additional postponements. I believe they can be postponed up to 3 times. Section 9 amendments. NRS 116.31164 would be amended under Section 8, further identifies persons who may not purchase that specific property to include an appraiser involved in the sale or a director, officer, and others, or a person who operated an internet website or other electronic medium involved in the sale. And that's it, I think. I'll be happy to answer any questions that I may know.
Chair, I was going to ask you, would you like some of the sheriffs to speak also on the reasoning for this bill before going into questions? I think it may give better examples to some of their needs for this and why this is so repetitive. The verbiage is repetitive over and over again in the bill.
As they weren't part of the original bill presentation, they're more than welcome to come and testify. But I think that the explanation, it has been explained, so I think we can proceed with questions. And I appreciate you addressing at the beginning the clarification that you had worked out with legal, because that was shared with us as well. So thank you for that. With that, I will open it up to questions. Our first question is from Assemblywoman Cohen.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. So my question, I guess, is more of a comment or request. In Section 2, sub 4, and then again in Section 6 and 9, it's the section about the persons who may not become purchasers. So the officers, the appraisers, the people who operate the internet websites, et cetera. Minority Leader, would you be willing to add language that includes their close relatives, that type of thing, so that we're making sure that we're really, I think, meeting the goal of that section, that they're not benefiting from their positions involved with these sales?
Chair, may I go to PK O'Neill, O'Neill. I forgot to do that. Assemblywoman Cohen, I would be more than willing to do that, and I think it would actually be best to say within, and I may ask for your assistance, the 3rd degree of consanguinity, as Assemblywoman LaRue Hatch said. Is that acceptable to you?
Thank you. Yes, and maybe legal could help us with some standard language that I think is in the statutes about that. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Assemblywoman. Next question from Assemblywoman Summers Armstrong.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My colleague asked my question, and I appreciate that, but I'd also like to add a little bit more. Also, not the members of those, no employees of those companies. If they're going to run the sale, no one inside their company should be also participating because they have inside information. So I hope you would be open to that as well.
Assemblywoman Summers Armstrong, I appreciate, this is the nice thing in the questioning. We really sort of flesh out some of the issues that we overlooked. So I'm in full agreement, and I thank you for that suggestion.
Thank you. Our next question is from Assemblyman Gray.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First issue I see is, and I'll just use this one as an example, I saw it a couple times in here, Section 9 amendments. Under Section 6, the internet provider must provide notification. I think what you really mean there is not the internet provider, but the auction site provider or whoever's providing the service. I mean, Charter's an internet provider, but they don't provide the auction service. So I don't think they're going to be making any notifications of postponement, if that makes sense. So the other question I have is with regard to fees. So we have these auctions to recoup monies for the government entities that are, that are having the auction. What kind of fees are, these folks providing? I know they can vary widely, and is it always in the best interest to do it through an auction service provider on the internet as opposed to, say, the old-fashioned way of doing it on the steps? So, I mean, I'm always in favor of trying to do it electronically if possible, but will it always make fiscal sense, I guess, is the question.
Assemblyman Gray, I'll tell you the first part of that is, you're right. It will be the auction provider will give the notices. The second part on that is you'll hear from the sheriffs. They will call, even in Las Vegas, they will call for the sale on the courthouse steps. No one is there, let alone think about Lincoln County, where there's even less population. No one is there, and then they're stuck. There's a backup of property, and the county is not getting full use and receiving funds. So that's adds to the fees directly. I will call a friend and let our executive director handle that.
Is that your final answer?
That is my final answer. Thank you.
Pamela Del Porto, P-A-M-E-L-A, Del Porto, D-E-L-P-O-R-T-O. Assemblyman Gray, I will be happy to reach out to some of the auction providers and find out if they have upfront or after fees. Thank you for your question.
Thank you.
And Ms. Del Porto, could you submit that to the committee so that everyone has that response?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much. We have a question from Assemblywoman Considine.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for this presentation. My concern is through the lens of affordable housing. So I know that this includes real property at a foreclosure sale. And one of my questions is there a way to confirm or to ensure equitable access when an internet bidder, let's say you have someone who is trying to buy a home that they're going to live in because the price would be less at a foreclosure sale than otherwise, competing with large entities, corporations, equity firms, whatever you're talking about, who could have an algorithm that could be automatically set to do that last bid like a tenth of a second prior to the auction closing. Has that been anything that's been discussed, or is there a way to make it more equitable? If somebody's standing on the steps, there's a human being picking people up to the end of the auction, and this can be a little bit more manipulated, and that's a worry that I have. Thank you.
Pamela Del Porto, P-A-M-E-L-A, D-E-L-P-O-R-T-O. I can certainly reach out and ask that question as well.
Thank you. Not seeing any additional questions, we will go ahead and open it up. Are you asking for a question, Assemblyman? Yes. Please proceed.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. So one thing I'm not clear on, not knowing much about these sales, is Section 1 where it says you have to do public notice in 3 places, or if it's on the internet, your notice is on the internet, and that's repeated in a number of places. So does that mean if I'm interested in these kinds of sales, I need to look in 2 places to figure out the universe of sales? So is it that rather than being able to either go to the public place or go on the internet and see the universe of sales, which is some are on the internet, some aren't? Is that how this works?
Pamela Del Porto, P-A-M-E-L-A, D-E-L-P-O-R-T-O. From my knowledge and information on what I've read, you're going to have the same notice posted publicly and on the internet.
If I may add, P.K. O'Neill, O-N-E-I-L-L, I remembered it finally. Assemblyman Orlicker, that was actually the conversation I had with legal earlier today. And it's my understanding, and maybe Mr. Wilkerson would best answer that, but it's my understanding that they would be in both places for the public notice. So whatever medium you use, it's available or you're being notified of it. And I would allow legal answer.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. That is correct.
Thank you, and thank you, legal, for such a concise answer. Thank you. With that, we will go ahead and close questioning and open it up to testimony for Assembly Bill 142. If there's anyone here in Carson City that would like to testify, again, in support of Assembly Bill 142, I ask that you approach the table. Of course, everyone will have up to 2 minutes to state their support. Again, stating in support means you're in support of the bill in its, I'll say in the bill presentation in its entirety, because there were amendments that have been already mentioned as well. So with that, please remember to state your name clearly and spell it for the record.
I guess I'm going first. Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Vincent Guthreau, spelled Vinson, last name Guthreau, Guthreau. I serve as the Executive Director for NACO, the Nevada Association of Counties. We rise in support just on the bringing the law up to the sort of 21st century and modernizing and streamlining this approach. It's already used by our counties for other departments. So we appreciate the bill sponsor bringing it forward, and we're in support of this measure. Thank you.
Hello, thank you for having us here today. My name is Richard Hickox. My last name is spelled Hickox. I am a Churchill County Sheriff, and I'm here to support this bill. There's a couple of things that I wanted to say first off, and I do appreciate your approach that it needs to be for societal good and that there needs to be change, not just for the sake of change, but because somebody else is doing it. I really support this bill because I think that it's something that we need to do to get a better equitable sale. Right now, I've stood on the steps of the sheriff's office, or the courthouse, and 100-degree heat, and we have nobody there. But we have houses for sale. We have property that's for sale within the county. And we talked to some people that we know that are looking for houses, but they can't make the sale because it's the hours that are there, are 9 to 5. And so they can't make it there. This bill would allow them to bid on that property, to maybe get a home, at the convenience of their home or at the coffee shop when they have a few minutes of time. In regards to the fees that are associated currently, you have filing fees that are there. You have hours that are put in by our department as we process these papers, and so those fees are still there. The county currently uses an auction house to sell other property for other departments, and so they are posted. Those fees are there, but they're still making more money on those sales than they were the other way, simply because they're of greater availability to more people, and it reaches out to a greater audience, which is really the point of this. If we're to sell property that is back pay, right? You want to reach your broadest audience. You want to be able to reach the biggest portion of it so you can get that recouped. And so I would really support this, and I would ask that you do it as well.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jerome Tushbant. The last name is spelled Tushbant. I'm the undersheriff here in Carson City. Yeah, I'm just going to echo what I've heard from Assemblyman O'Neill and Executive Director Del Porto, as well as the sheriff. Currently, the sheriff's office uses an online auction for personal property, not real property, with great success. And what we found is also over at the county side, the treasurer's office uses the system that is proposed here for real property. What we found is that at the end of the day, it's a fair, efficient, and transparent method to get out to the widest audience. With that said, we support AB 142. Thank you for your time.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the Assembly. My name is Jesse Watts. I'm the Sheriff of Eureka County, Nevada, and I'm here in support of AB 142 for multiple reasons. It brings our sales current and consistent with what happens at the Treasurer's Office, what happens with what we do with surplus property of the county, and as Sheriff Hickox said, it does take and broaden the audience. As he said, 100-degree heat. Well, I've stood out in front of the steps in negative temperatures on certain things, and it's not fun. The county has also broadened its sales of property through the online basis. And to answer or elaborate to your question about an algorithm, we don't draw anything until it closes at 5 o'clock. So to us, we don't see the difference of who put the first bid in or who put the last bid in. And those packets are opened at the time that it closes, and we go forth that way. I'm here with full support of AB 142 because it's consistent and current with practices throughout the state with other properties. Thank you.
Adrian Hunt, ADRIAN HUNT.
for the record, we're here to support as well. I echo the same sentiments of everyone here in support as well, but it definitely frees up our civil deputies to perform other duties such as protection orders as well. So we're in full support.
Is there anyone else here in Carson City that would like to testify in support of Assembly Bill 142? Anyone in Las Vegas who would like to testify in support? Not seeing anyone in Las Vegas approach. Again, the phone number is 1-669-900-6833, and the meeting ID is 883-669-80234. Broadcasting, is there anyone on the line that would like to testify in support of Assembly Bill 142?
Callers, if you would like to testify in support of Assembly Bill 142, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. This is Sheriff Scott Henroyd, White Pine County Sheriff's Office in Ely, Nevada. Last name is Henriod. As Sheriff of White Pine County, I've had the opportunity to participate in quite a few of these sheriff sales. Several of those sales were quite memorable. One had to do with selling sheep, and the other had to deal with selling of mining claims. Standing on the front house court steps to conduct these sheriff sales is always interesting. The sheep sale ended up with the owner of the sheep buying his own sheep back. And the mining claim sale ended up in quite a process as the owner of the claims and the attorney for the other party involved coming to an agreement on the sale. This was quite time consuming for me, and I just want you to know that I am supportive of this AB Bill 142. It gives us quite an option for these types of sales. Thank you.
Callers, if you would like to testify in support of Assembly Bill 142, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no other callers choosing to participate at this time.
Thank you, Broadcasting. I will open it up for anyone that would like to testify in opposition of Assembly Bill 142. If there's anyone here in Carson City that would like to oppose Assembly Bill 142? Not seeing anyone approach. If there's anyone in Las Vegas that would like to oppose Assembly Bill 142? Not seeing anyone in Las Vegas. Broadcasting, is there anyone on the line that would like to oppose Assembly Bill 142?
Callers, if you would like to testify in opposition to Assembly Bill 142, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers choosing to participate at this time.
Thank you. Then I will open it up for anyone testifying in neutral. If there's anyone here in Carson City that would like to testify in neutral. Anyone in Las Vegas that would like to testify in neutral. Broadcasting, is there anyone on the line that would like to testify in neutral?
Callers, if you would like to testify in neutral on Assembly Bill 142, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers choosing to participate at this time.
Okay, thank you. With that, then I will welcome the bill's sponsors and presenters back up if you'd like to make any final comments.
Thank you, Chair Miller. I'll just make a quick question, actually, if I may, back to Assemblywoman Considine. If the clarification was made for you on the bidding process, or do you need additional information?
The sheriff who explained that his bidding process isn't an auction where people are bidding on top of each other, if that is across all counties, that would be great, but if not, if it is up to this last second bidding, I'd like to get some more information. Thank you.
We'll make sure that's taken care of for you. Otherwise, I would greatly appreciate your support. As you heard, other agencies within our state are utilizing this methodology. We're just trying to bring our sheriffs into the 21st century. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your bill presentation, Minority Leader O'Neill. And with that, I will go ahead and close the hearing on Assembly Bill 142. That leaves us with our last order of business, which is public comment. Again, public comment is open to anyone that would like to make a comment pertaining to anything under the purview of the Judiciary Committee. Our phone number again is 1-669-900-6833, and the meeting ID number is 883-669-80234. So is there anyone first here in Carson City that would like to make public comment?
Tanya Brown, for the record, spelled TonjaBrown, Advocates for the Inmates and the Innocent. Good morning, Chair, members of the committee. We have, on behalf of Advocates for the Inmates and the Innocent, we have submitted our proposed amendment to Assembly Bill 49 that's going to be heard on Wednesday. It is a petition to establish factual innocence posthumously. Currently, there have been 381 people who have been exonerated for crimes they didn't commit. 25 of those were posthumously exonerated. When a defendant in a criminal case dies, the court dismisses any ongoing court procedures as moot. In most states, there is no regular procedure for reconsidering the guilt of the convicted defender after death. That's one of the reasons why posthumous pardons and exonerations are rare. In the case of Timothy Cole, it was a Texas case, the court granted a posthumous exoneration 10 years after Cole's death. The court stated that Cole was and is innocent of the crime for which he was convicted, and in prison this exonerating Cole and forever removing the legal disabilities attaching to him and his survivors is a result of his wrongful conviction. This statement is so true. There is still a stigma attached to the families who are left behind. Some time ago, I posted on Facebook, do you remember where you were on May 9th, 1988? Some of you may remember because it was an eventful day, May 9th and May 10th. On May 10th, Nostradamus had predicted in a prophet that California would suffer a great earthquake and fall into the ocean. And while that was going on May 9th, people in California were panicking to see if it was going to come true. And at the same time, people were in Jack's Bar in Carson City making bets on whether or not tomorrow's May 10th, 88 prediction was going to come true. In fact, my brother, along with those witnesses, were there. Those witnesses testified.
Your final comment, Ms. Brown?
I would just like to play just one little stigma because we talked about the stigma. I have a...
Ms. Brown, a final comment.
Okay, the final comment is this. It still attaches to this day. I get phone calls when I try to do anything from the family members. Nasty. I have a portion of it. But anyways, I also have retired law enforcement misrepresenting the facts in Facebook to members of the legislature, to the courts. It has to stop, and we, those left behind, want justice for our loved ones. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. Is there anyone else here in Carson City that would like to make public comment? Anyone in Las Vegas that would like to make public comment? Broadcasting, is there anyone on the line that would like to make public comment?
Callers, if you would like to provide public comment, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue.
Anne Marie Grant, Advocates for the Inmates and the Innocent. I'd like to talk about posthumous exonerations. Although posthumous exonerations can serve a valuable role in the effort to prevent wrongful convictions, By producing instructive findings on their causes, this will often not be the primary reason for which they are sought or conducted. A central justifying purpose behind all forms of exoneration is the core human need to retroactively erase a poor reputation wrongly attributed to an individual. In many senses, this is a remedial need rooted in corrective justice to right the wrongs and restore the injured, the innocent who have died wrongfully convicted while in prison, to the status quo. Although the wronged individual cannot personally benefit from this, it is important the instinctive need for justice does not end with a defendant's death, but continues to be felt by his family and his friends, the greater community. But the stigma can be removed from their name and their family's name through a posthumous exoneration. Like all exonerations, they are important to the community and its sense of fairness and justice. The posthumous exoneration serves the function to destigmatize a full rectification of the harm from false accusations and convictions, and an assurance that the exoneree's family can benefit from his restored standing in society. The conviction of the innocent leaves the guilty free to commit crimes, thus threatening public safety. I'm asking you all to support our amendment to AB 49, adding posthumous exonerations to the language of the bill. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Broadcasting, is there anyone else on the line?
Chair, the public line is open and working. There are no other callers at this time.
Okay, thank you. So I will go ahead and close public comment. Just a reminder that we will meet again tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. And so with that, thank you everyone for your engagement and participation. This meeting is adjourned.